I'm your host, Pam Schmiel, the editor behind hempbeveragenews.com. Green Thumb Industries' Senorita Beverages are among the most popular drinks on the THC market today. The team is led by Rick Schepp, a veteran of the alcohol industry, who's opening doors to new venues for the category and industry, including Chicago's Navy Pier. He joins the podcast to talk about their product line, why the team chose specific flavors and formats, and what it takes to work with distributors and retailers. He also shares tips for emerging brands looking to break into this space. Let's welcome Rick Schepp to the show. So I thought first, before we get into the products and everything that you're doing, I know that I've seen you've been on panel discussions at a couple beverage events, I think the Beverage Forum and CannaBev Summit. I'm just wondering if there's any points that stick out to you, what people are talking about or...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, most conversations start with, so what do you think is going to happen in November? So that's where, everybody obviously wants to understand what everybody's hearing, because right now nobody has a clear point of view on exactly how things could happen. So it's a lot of knowledge sharing. And that's one of the things I like most about this industry is everybody's kind of in the same situation together. So it's not about just edging each other out. It's about sharing the information so we can all protect the category. So I'd say that's definitely one of the top conversation points. And then once you get past that, it becomes how should this look and how should we be operating in this market? Because right now, one thing we talked about in some of the panels I've been on, which kind of bordered regulation and kind of route to market, is right now we're caught, not necessarily caught, but we're sort of a blend of non-alcoholic drinks and alcoholic drinks. And those two route to markets with the distributors and the way that retailers operate are very different. So we have some retailers that are operating it very much like alcohol beverage and others that are treating it much more like non-alcoholic. And that, plays differently depending on your distribution network. And we've aligned with Alc Bev distributors throughout each of our markets. So that works great in 90% of cases. And then there are some cases where people in non-alc drinks say we can actually operate differently than alcohol. And there's, other routes to market, direct ship, things like that. So that's a lot of what I hear people talking about is how do you balance different points of view, different approaches from retailers, from distributors. And ultimately, we want to get our product out to consumers in the most effective way. Nobody knows what that right answer is yet. So it's a lot of knowledge sharing on that front of what are you seeing, what's working, what's not, and how can we kind of learn from each other to, just make the category more, known and more adopted.
Do you think that it's necessary that we follow the 3-tier system, or do you think there's opportunities for other, just regular like transportation, independent? Do you think we need a 3-tier system?
It's a good question and often debated in this space.
Oh, okay.
For me, myself, I don't necessarily think it would be required for the industry to be successful in the long run. That being said, I do think from where we are, the distributors add an immense amount of value in the relationships with retailers, relationships with local governments, state governments, federal, that from where we are now of a situation where regulators do not feel like they have their arms around this category and can regulate it. I think the 3-tier system is such an obvious corollary that we know how to ship beverages over here if they have alcohol in them. These look exactly the same, but just have THC instead of alcohol. It's a very natural fit. So we've gone all in with Alc Bev distributors across our markets. And we're very confident in that. That being said, there are a lot of opportunities, direct to consumer shipping. A lot of brands have built very large businesses on this, and it's a great way to connect with consumers that are used to purchasing online. But when push comes to shove, if 3-tier system is what's able to get people comfortable, to me, that's a very logical approach and something we're very comfortable, leaning into because we have great relationships and, we ultimately, again, want to get this product out to as many consumers as we can. And we think the 3-tier system is a great vehicle for that.
Yeah, I've been hearing a couple different things, and I was talking to a distributor the other day who said, and he's been in the alcohol business for 40 years or something, and he said that there's been so much consolidation. I guess there was just an announcement the other day, California, big California distributor, R and something
Or at
that is,
DC.
yeah, is liquidating or yeah. So, and he thought it was going to maybe make a lot more independent distributors start appearing and maybe kind of coming into the space. So
That's the other side to your question, which was, smaller distributors versus, the bigger alc bev distributors. And I do think, there are places for both. Right now there's so many brands that just getting into the biggest distributor isn't necessarily good for every brand if you can't get attention, you can't break through and get that support. That for a lot of brands, a smaller distributor might be the best option. And we have a range of distributors from very small to very large, and there's no one thing that says yes, bigger is better. It really
yeah,
is that unique market fit and how does that distributor cover the types of stores where these can be sold in each market, because that's very different as well. So that's kind of how we think about it, is just who's the best distributor to serve the market and to partner with us. And luckily we've had great luck finding a lot of really great partners. And when people call me and ask me questions, that's always my feedback, is don't just try and go for the biggest name, because that
yeah.
might not be the best fit for your brand.
Yeah, that is great advice because also if these big distributors have all these brands and you're not doing well and you don't have that marketing support, like you're saying, from maybe a smaller distributor would make sense. So staying in the distribution side for while we're here, are you selling in all the states that you're allowed to be selling in now? Are you far and
Close.
wide in your distribution? And is that how you approached it? Did you approach it wide instead of deep, or did you kind of build concentrically coming out? What was your approach?
Yeah.
Because I know you've been out for a few years here.
Yeah. So, our approach initially when we came into this was, I came from an Alc Bev background. So I was at Beam Suntory before. And what I saw really work well in Alc Bev and some of our leaders is own your home market, show that you can compete, and then expand from there. And as we came into the space, that was our mindset, because that's a really good way to build a good proof point. You can build a really good, compelling story on velocity and what your brands can do in a market. That's a really easy sell then to the second, third, fourth market distributors, retailers, and so on. What ended up happening is we started that where we got off to a great start. We're based in Illinois. So Illinois is our largest market, and that got off to a really hot start. But what we saw is that at the same time, a lot of chain retailers were getting into the space as well. And that's really where that model flips, because if a chain like a Circle K calls and they're selling in Florida and you're selling in Florida, great. But what about when they want to go to their next market? You want to continue that relationship, and especially if they're creating the sets across markets, you want to be able to say yes, we can be in all of your sets. No, no kind of extra hassles for them dealing with different markets. Who can they carry? So that kind of flipped it for us, where we said, okay, yes, we'll keep focusing, make sure we build those right proof points in the story, but we have to actually move faster and get more coverage so that we can adapt to the chain landscape, which has really leaned in this year, far beyond my expectations, especially knowing, there's the November ban on the books today. Chains have continued to lean in as they see opportunity, and they've seen their sales continue to grow. It's been, really encouraging to see those same chains continue to lean in even more so than pre last November, when we didn't know this potential ban was on the table.
I know, I'm surprised. It seems like everybody's in full speed ahead. Just everybody you talk to, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it's at some moments it like doesn't make sense, but at the same time, everybody is saying the consumers are calling for this. The stores that are putting it in, it's if it's a liquor store, maybe they're saving growth year over year, or stemming some declines that they're facing. So I think it's just really a win-win, where it's what the customer's asking for and it's helping the retailer as well. So
yeah.
hopefully that continues, and the growth that's being seen is that yes, all these retailers are seeing this as a real opportunity. This isn't just a few brands trying to push this fringe idea. But real retailers, real distributors are saying, no, this is something consumers want and should be a part of the discussion.
Right. The market's getting flooded also with hemp brands coming out there, or, beverage brands coming out there, but you've already kind of been in the market, so you're kind of ahead of all these other brands trying to get in there. But how do you, what do you see in the landscape, like your competition out there and how you're positioning Senorita? Are there any direct competitors to that, or how are you positioning it to try to stand out? And I think I know one is that I read that the original founders were like winemakers or something. Like, what are you leaning into to make it stand out? I would imagine that's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we haven't been in the market as long as a lot of other competitors. So, while
Okay.
now at this point we've been here longer than some of the new entrants, it's all changing very quickly. So, what I would say overall is the market isn't fully clear on who the end consumer is going to be and how do people think about THC drinks part of their consumption occasions today. I think people are learning and adapting to what's happening right now, but nobody truly knows, the next wave of consumers coming in, what will they care about the most. So the advice I always give is have a clear point of view on what your product delivers and what's most important to you. And that's really been, with Senorita, that has been flavor. So you mentioned the two founders, Joel Gott and Charles Beeler, second generation or fourth generation and second generation winemakers, respectively, between the two. And they really approach drinks very differently than I would have coming in. They think about the balance of every flavor. How does, the nose compared to the taste, compared to the effect, and how do all those things tie together, that they're really intentional about every ingredient that gets put in and what is it adding or subtracting, from that experience. So that's really where we focused with Senorita is flavor first. More broadly beyond, that is our kind of like North Star, is that flavor has to be there. We position Senorita as a premium social cocktail brand. And cocktail obviously does not include alcohol, so more of the mocktail space. But our drinks are largely all agave based. So a lime jalapeno margarita, a mango margarita, a grapefruit paloma, and our most recent introduction on the RTD side was ranch water, which is a traditional tequila soda lime, swapped out the tequila for THC. So that's been really successful for us. People know what a margarita is. There are other brands that have cocktail flavors and offerings. However, we've stayed very narrowly focused on that to make sure that people really understand when you reach for Senorita that it matches that kind of offering of a lime jalapeno margarita, that flavor comes through, but also that you know what you're going to get when you taste that next flavor. It's not going to be something that has totally caught you off guard and feels like a different product. We really want it to feel like one brand across our lineup.
Yeah, I actually, now that you're saying that you're focusing on the flavor, one of my biggest complaints about all the beverages in the market, and I love the beverages, is there's so few with like really good flavor formulations. It's all about um flavored seltzer water, basically. There's no complex, it tastes like flavored seltzer water, thin, nothing that's a deep, complex, layered flavor. So I think that's a huge plus because I feel like there's not a lot of that in the shelf. So to me, that's already ahead of what everybody's doing out there. And then why did you choose tequila to come out of the gate?
Yeah, so that was actually Joel
Yeah.
and Charles. When they came into the space, it was not that they were trying to create a THC drink. They were trying to actually come up with a good non-alcoholic product. And they said, okay, well, what do we like? We like a spicy margarita. So for them, that was the logical place to start. So they started there. And as they were developing that, they said, oh, hey, our kids are reaching for THC, or not kids, but their children.
Yeah.
College age children reach for THC just as fast as wine or spirits or beer. And they said, okay, well, that's interesting. At the same time, the THC emulsions were coming along that you could put them into a drink and then work around that flavor more easily than you could before. So they said, okay, great. Now we can bring THC into this. And then they're like, great, we have a drink that we love. THC provides a great effect, beyond just a non-alcoholic, good tasting option. And that's really what kind of started them down this path. And then as we joined the team, we kind of continued that same idea. At that point, they had the lime jalapeno margarita, the mango margarita, and had just introduced the grapefruit Paloma in Canada. So we brought the Paloma to the US and then extended together the ranch water. And I think that's really what for us has been really beneficial is we've taken over a lot of the kind of commercial team build outside of how are we going to, scale this business. And Joel and Charles have stayed very involved both on the branding side, as well as that formulation side. So, we were also earlier talking about 1777, which is our new spirit offering. And we took that exact same approach where it started from what should a spirit taste like to us? And that was, it has to taste good. It has to be something you can take a shot of, drink it on the rocks or mix it. But also we didn't want it to just be one note sweet. We wanted it to be a little bit more complex. So that kind of then sent us down the path that we went down, and we wound up with a really delicious but complex offering that just launched in the past 2 weeks, but so far is off to a great start, and we're really excited to see where that category can go. Obviously, absent any regulatory changes coming.
And okay, a couple questions. So is the flavor of the new the spirit brand, so you said there's some flavor in it, but does the tequila bite through, or is it the kind of thing where you really need to add, can you sip it, or do you have to add some sort of a mixer to it?
Yeah, that was a big debate of like, how much of that bite do you want? Because that tells you when you do a shot, you just did a shot of Fireball
which I
or whatever
love.
it may be. Right. And a lot of people do like that. So where we landed is we did use agave as the base, just like all of our RTD offerings. But then where the direction that we went is added Mexican lime, which is in all of our RTDs as well. Some dragon fruit to add a little bit of a kind of unique sweetness. And then we paired that with Acapulco Gold. So the Acapulco Gold strain terpenes to bring a little bit of that kind of lineage and kind of tie that back to the agave, as well as the cannabis world that, lives right next to our hemp offerings. And then paired that with a small amount of chili extract on the back end to provide a little bit of that heat that kind of lets you know, okay, yes, this is, like a elk bev spirit. So tried to have a nice balance of, this is something that you can definitely sip on neat. I think most people's favorite approach is just on the rocks because it is so good. You don't necessarily want to add a lot to it, but also mixes great, whether it's just a seltzer that you have at home or make a more complex cocktail. We have a number of cocktail recipes that are awesome, but that's what we're excited to see is how do people consume this outside of our group that we're already in love, but we're excited to watch the consumers really adopt it as well.
Right. I was talking to John Halper from Top 10 Liquors in Minnesota. Everybody knows
Yeah,
him
absolutely.
very
Yep,
well.
of course.
Everyone in this industry knows him. But he was saying that he's focused, 25% of his sales comes from, THC beverages, but he's focused on trying to figure out what did the 75% haven't welcomed it yet. Who are those 75%? So as you keep saying that, that's what I keep thinking of him saying is who are those people? How are they going to unfold? So it's going to be interesting. And so he also said that shots do really well, like, the shots do really well in his store like crazy. So, and I've heard other people who are doing the hemp beverages are also doing that version. Why did you decide on spirit versus something like that? Or was that
Yeah,
even a thought? I mean, how did
it
you?
was.
Yeah.
So for us, one coming from the liquor side of things, obviously, many have a 750 milliliter bottle and then offer 50 milliliter, shot sizes as well. So that's definitely something we're keeping our eye on, and really want to make sure we got the product out effectively first, and then come back to additional sizes. So we're certainly looking at that 50 mil size as a complement to 1777. But we've also looked at other shot formulations and different approaches to that, 5-bar energy type kind of format that has been very popular. So, we continue to look at it. And for us, it's really a matter of there's so many opportunities in this space that you have to be a bit selective and say, what do we go after first, second, third, versus trying to stretch our team too thin and, not executing all of them at the high level that's needed to break through in such a competitive market.
All right. So have you launched into any stores anywhere, the 750 mil brand?
Yes, just
Okay.
started hitting stores this week. I know it's here in Illinois at Binny's, which is a large chain here in the state, but we'll be rolling out across retail over the next few weeks across our markets.
Oh,
Anywhere
that
that can be compliantly sold. That's
because I don't think they don't have many choices in stores of this, the spirits side of things, really. So it'll be kind of a new test out there.
it's definitely been growing lately. There are a few brands that have really kind of led the space to date. Nowadays is certainly a leader in the space. That's the interesting thing is there's so many different pockets of demand that we wanted to start with the RTD because that's where we felt both regulations would go and would most likely, allow for a 5 or 10 milligram canned beverage before a spirit. And, we'll see if that's true. But what we saw is that there are consumers that want a canned product, but plenty of consumers are asking for something else, right? Maybe I want either just less volume before bed, or I want to make my own cocktail. I want to handle the flavor side of things. So for us, it's about following the consumer and where's that demand and interest, and then try and create the most compelling offering for that demand.
Did you give consideration into I think you have the long, like 12-ounce long cans
Slim can, yes.
versus the slim can versus the like
Traditional beer
yeah, like
cans.
what
Yes.
I think of an RTD more like that, but like thinking of your shelf, maybe merchandising what was the thought behind that?
Yeah,
Choosing.
I mean, I think right now the 12-ounce sleek slim cans are just very popular. Consumers are very comfortable with them.
Mhm.
And for our branding, we really want our brand name to really be the billboard, the hero. And the nice thing about the sleek cans is it's a little taller, which allows us to really get our brand all the way
Oh yeah,
across and
yeah,
really be a true billboard. So for us, it was kind of a
yeah.
no-brainer of it gives you the most space to build that brand, and also is a good product for consumers that they're used to consuming right now, as all the seltzers and a lot of the new teas and lemonades are coming out in that format. So we wanted to play to where the consumer is today.
I love that. That is, I mean, talk about getting your brand name out there versus like just an attractive branded, which looks great too, but that you see across the room. And I've seen, some of your ads and yeah, it just pops out. So it's kind of yeah, that's really smart.
And
Um,
that's all Joel and Charles from the start. They had that vision. That was part of what drew us to this brand. Was they
yeah.
had such a clear point of view on what is this brand, how does it look, and we've been working together on it to refine things like that. But the bones were there, and that I think that base can billboard effect is so strong that's one thing we definitely do not want to lose.
Yeah, yeah, I haven't seen anyone else doing that. That's really clever. So, what are your most popular dosing? Is it, I mean, I assume you have 5 and 10 out there, or are you doing even lower? Where do you see?
Yeah, so right now, so Senorita, we have 5 and 10 milligram cans in the RTDs. The 1777 Spirit is 10 milligrams per ounce and a half shot. So that's really where we focused. We haven't gone below 5 milligram. There is, when you talk to people say they want less than 5 milligrams, or there's a lot of demand for, are there less than 5 milligram offerings? But when you look at sales in most markets, 10 milligrams is 80% or more of the demand relative to 5 milligrams. So ultimately, I think there's a lot of things that go into that, between pricing, the ability to try different dosages without it being too overwhelming, like in taking too many edibles, for instance. I think you can find your dose really easily with beverages. So we've stayed focused on 5 and 10. The bulk of our business, like the market, ends up in the 10 milligram, especially in the off-premise liquor stores, groceries, C-stores, and that side of things. And then on our Rhythm brand, which is a second brand that we have, it's one of our cannabis brands at Green Thumb. That one we have introduced a 25 milligram offering, largely because there is a lot of demand for higher dose. And in most markets, if you can sell above 10 milligrams, things that are above 10 milligrams will sell faster because that potency to price ratio is just better. And there's a lot of consumers looking for that. We see that as an opportunistic ad, likely not going to be where regulations land over time. But if there are consumers that really want that product and we feel like we can do it in a safe way to get it to them, we're happy to meet that demand. But looking forward, we see that 5 and 10 milligram is really the sweet spot for consumption.
And then as far as margins, somebody also said that there's not much of a difference in manufacturing between a 5 milligram and a 10 milligram as
That's
far
right.
as what it costs. So you can't really offer, oh, because this is 5, I can't give it to you too much cheaper. So that's a fact then. I just wanted to confirm that
It is. Yeah,
it
as
is.
a percentage of your overall product cost, the THC is definitely not driving the line item. So it is hard because you want that you either want the 5 milligram to come down and then taking lower margins there, or bringing the 10 milligram up and then you're not competitive. So unfortunately, you kind of get squeezed on both sides, and then there's not a lot of price separation between the 5 and the 10. So for a consumer, it's very reasonable to say, oh, for $1 or $2 more of this THC thing that I'm buying, I get twice as much. Like, okay, I'll give that a try. So I think that both shapes the initial purchase decision, but also I've heard a lot of consumers, they'll have half of a can of a product and then come back to it the next day. And hey, that's not going to be the best experience, especially on carbonated products.
Yeah.
But consumers are willing to make that trade-off right now, given the pricing. So I think as overall pricing comes down in the category, as brands are able to get more scale, we'll see that be, I think, less of a concern. Because I think ultimately where this gets really interesting and successful is when it's the similar price to a high noon and people aren't thinking about the cost per can as much at that point. And then it can be more of just a swap in for a seltzer or beer versus a more premium offering.
As far as discounts in stores, and we're obviously suffering in dispensaries. It's a big problem, BOGOs and all that kind of stuff. How does that work in these regular retail stores, liquor stores, or Circle K?
It's very different retail to retailer, and I think that comes back to, are you treating it like alc bev, where there are very tight rules in terms of promotional agreements and giving any value to a retailer, versus the non-alc side, which you can directly pay money to discount the product. So I think that varies across retailers. What we've seen is we try and partner with our distributors and retailers to offer sharp price points around key promotional events for us. So for us, Cinco de Mayo is huge for Senorita. So this is a time where we want to make sure we're out there, we're getting those displays and have a compelling price point for the consumers to reach for it. So I think that's becoming an increasingly important part of this category as it gets more competitive, which is both to get the consumer to grab that, but also to work with your retailers and build that relationship of, how can I support your business and the velocity by promoting my product? So I think it goes both ways. It helps the consumer get to know your product, but also helps that retailer relationship as well.
How do you support the retail? Once the sale, you always hear the sale doesn't stop here. A lot of brands fall short when the sale is made and it goes on the shelf, and then they're not, pushing the velocity. Maybe some things that really work for you guys to move it off the shelves. Do you think?
Yeah. For us, it kind of starts with trying to be a good partner. Like we kind of talked about at the start of this, nobody knows exactly what's going on, and everybody has a different point of view on what's happening and what comes next. So for us, as a larger company, we do have quite a few government affairs resources and are able to use that with our retailers to help them understand what's going on. So first and foremost, we just want to be their partner. If they have any questions about the industry, regulations, anything like that, we'll give them our point of view, share as much as we know. So that's really kind of where it starts, is we want them to trust us and be able to, have a conversation about the business and how do we do it compliantly, how do we do it well, safely, and that side. And then, from that first point, it really comes down to that. What helps the retailer? Is it they need help training or thinking about how do we, roll it out to a second market? Happy to have those conversations and talk through how we can support those things, as well as then saying, ultimately, what you care about is your consumer. How can we care about that consumer too? Let's get some samplings on the books, which gives consumers an opportunity to try products and also introduce them to our brand. So sampling's been huge for us. Conversations on regulatory, safety, training, things like that. All of those things kind of come together to be, ultimately, if one of our buyers has a question, I want them to pick up the phone and give us a call, before anybody else. So that just comes down to how can we be a good partner?
Right. Yeah. And then kind of winding down, do you have any advice for emerging brands, like how they should approach a distributor, not just coming in and saying, "Oh, I have the best flavors, whatever, RTD, like my brand, my brand." Like what kind of what could they say to get somebody interested and not hide in the back from them? Like,
Good question. I think with distributors, what's really important is, one, bring any evidence you do have of what the product can do. So obviously, if this is your first launch, you don't have that. But if you do have selling stories from retailers or other distributors that you have been selling with, that's going to carry the most weight with everybody, because that's hard data and it can show them exactly what this product can do. Beyond that, I'd be very concrete and honest about what you can offer and what you can't. These companies or distributors, they recognize we are not all Anheuser-Busch and Molson Coors, right? We don't have those unlimited budgets, but it's really important to say, here's what we are going to do. Here's how we're going to support this brand in the market, whether that's people, feet on the street that are going to be partnering with their brand, dollars, how are you going to spend that money? Things like that just really help them understand what it's going to be like to work with you and what support they'll have. Because if they see it as, great, you're going to give me this brand, I'm not going to hear from you again, and now I need to go sell it, that's not very, compelling to them. They just like the retailers, they want partners that they can lean on when they see an opportunity. We want them to give us a call and say, hey, this customer's looking for so-and-so. Could you guys support that? That's ultimately kind of how you win. But you can't rely on your distributor. You have to get out there yourself. It's incredibly important to have your own people in market, talking to the customers, talking to your distributors, because again, there's a lot of competition. No product sells itself. You have to get out there and really lead that and make sure that everybody knows who your brand is and who you are behind the brand.
great. And then I guess the last question is, as I know you guys got into a big stadium type situation in the Chicago
Yes.
area. How are you seeing well, how's that going, first of all? But second is, how do you see those new opportunities opening up in, like, the Live Nations of the world, or
You're referencing the United Center here in Chicago. So the first kind of major venue in the nation to bring in THC. So we've been live with that since about the beginning of the year. So far, it's been awesome and exceeded all of our expectations. What's most critical for us is that brand awareness, that trial, and what we've seen is, just as people know it's available, it continues to build and kind of continues to grow, show after show or event after event. We see those numbers continuing to tick up. So it's been a real home run for us. We're super excited about that relationship. We also sponsor a number of other concert venues, arenas throughout the nation. What's been surprising is that, especially after the United Center deal, that's gotten a lot more arenas and venues talking about this again. Insurance is oftentimes a challenge for people, but I think when people saw, oh, if the United Center could figure it out, can we not figure it out? So that certainly brought a lot of people, in to start talking about it. And for a lot of people, it'll be a decision of, is it now or once we have clarity, hopefully soon. But we've seen a lot of traction on that front. Beyond that, to retailers, we are in Target's pilot stores in Minnesota. So that's been fantastic to see, you know, such a well-known, established mass retailer like that come in and sell these products. Now it's in Minnesota where, you know, it's THC beverages are very well known. But it doesn't change anything that I did not think Target would be selling THC in 2026. And here we are. 2025, I believe, is when they started. So
Yeah.
it's pretty remarkable to see Target selling. So we're super lucky to be in their stores in Minnesota. And then beyond that, I would say the chains continue to lean in on the C-store side. You know, Circle K has continued to expand, and we're in the vast majority of their different states that they've expanded to, and they're kind of continuing that expansion, which is fun to see. But beyond Circle K, it really is, everybody's looking at it, and it really seems to be, are people comfortable learning and at a minimum doing a pilot now as we kind of all wait for that clarity? Or do they want a little bit more of that, you know, federal clarity to come through? But, you know, certainly as these bigger names have come in, the other big names are paying more attention. And, you know, I don't want to spoil anything or say this person's next. I do think we'll continue to see, you know, big retailers make moves to figure this space out, because again, the consumer is calling for it and it's helping the retailer's business. So most people are looking at this as a matter of when, not if, in my book.
Perfect way to end.